Hello, I'm Ethan, a New York-based organization development coach, and I work with organizations to unleash their people's untapped potential to increase employee performance, productivity, and profitability. And today I want to do something a little bit different. I usually focus these videos on organizations and empowering employees, but today I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which is actually strategic planning. So I want to go through at a very high level what I coach and consult with organizations to prepare for in their planning process so that by the end of the next calendar year, when you sit down and you look back on how you performed for the year, you can say, wow, I really achieved all of my top line, most strategic initiatives. So the first thing I get into the mindset of is a lot of people will say, well, it's really, really early right now. We're sitting in the middle of August. We're in the third quarter. I don't typically do this until the end of the calendar year. I stop, I look back at what happened last year, and then I look forward to next year. I'm like, wait a second. Now is actually an ideal time because before you know it, you're going to get into Labor Day. You're going to be in a mad dash of executing things from then until the end of the year. And you'll probably not give yourself the grace or the benefit of enough strategic advanced planning. So now is actually in August 2024, the perfect time to do your 2025 strategic plan. So here's what I would suggest we focus on. Here's what I work with my clients when I coach them for growth. What are the wild, huge, massively audacious projects, initiatives that you want to achieve next year to fuel your future business growth? It could be based on number of new clients acquired, launching new products or services, going into new markets, launching a YouTube channel, seeking strategic partnerships, any number of initiatives that are really, really huge, fundamentally important in terms of moving the needle between just incremental growth, which you've been achieving so far, to massive growth. And here's the other piece of this kind of massive initiative measuring impact. You have to ask yourself, how am I going to hold myself accountable? How am I, the people I work with, my team members, the organization, going to measure success? So that's where you start out with. Now, if you have other employees in your organization and you're not a solo practitioner, but you have other people that you lead, manage, who report to you, you've got actually then three sets of goals. The first are your goals. The second is your team's goals. And the third is the organization's goals. And here's where most organizations of any size fail to really leverage key performance indicators. They don't tie them all together. So now I'm talking for the rest of this strategic planning process to those of us who work on our own. We are consultants. We provide services to other organizations. As you hold yourself accountable, as you set up these big, audacious goals, you ask yourself, how am I going to measure the success? So they have to be quantifiable. I want to see numbers. So if you're talking about selling new products or services to existing clients, bringing new customers in, launching new products, finding new revenue channels, increasing your social presence, they're all valid. The question is, how are you going to hold yourself accountable by measuring what we call work outputs, or the numbers, the nouns, the measurable byproducts, the measurable outcomes? So that's the key to holding yourself accountable with goal setting. Now, what do I need in order to achieve these audacious, amazing goals? You've got to identify the assets you have currently that you can leverage, whether it's an excellent reputational brand, a Rolodex of extremely satisfied clients, some strategic partners, a really, really well-established social presence. It doesn't matter. You start out with, what do I have in my arsenal, my portfolio of established assets that can help me achieve those goals? And then you do the delta, or the difference between what you're going to need to achieve these goals and what you have and do not have. So where you're lacking are the resources, assets, the things you're going to need. It may be financial in nature. You may need funding. You may not have the revenue stream or the existing financial liquidity to pursue certain objectives. So you're going to need revenue from internal or external sources. It may be that you're lacking let's say, support staff. You may have to outsource or delegate, third level priority work to virtual administrative assistants, or you subcontract. Maybe you're going to hire students. But you need to identify everything that you're going to need to achieve these audacious, wild, bold goals. And after you identify the goals and you identify what you have currently, the delta or the difference is what don't you have that you're going to need to achieve these goals. And by the way, this is all written down. So now we transition into the fact that nobody is a success unto her or him or themselves. We all rely on other people to help us. So who are your people? Who's your tribe? Who are referral or center of influence partners? Who are strategic partners to work with? Who are people that you can lean on for coaching, mentoring, advice, and counsel? Maybe you're looking for an attorney or an accountant, but it doesn't matter who they are. You have to identify, you have to build, in other words, a roster of strategic partners that you can call on to support you. And that starts with working backwards from identifying who you're going to need, who you have, and the delta or the difference is who don't you have. And that's who you're going to need to help you, and go about seeking those relationships. So I mentioned this earlier. What can you leverage? What do you have in your portfolio, your arsenal that you can tap into? It may be exceptional relationships with people that you've built over the years. It may be trust that you've earned through serving clients. It may be your community engagement or volunteer work. Maybe your prior teaching in colleges and universities. What are the things that you've already established that are assets that you can take advantage of? And oftentimes, people, when I'm called in to do coaching and consulting, they don't realize the wealth, the depth of resource that they've created. And so sometimes it helps you having an outside coach or a consultant like myself or somebody else to assist you, because you've got unconscious bias, you've got blind spots, things that you're not even aware that you've accomplished, things that you've earned, things that you've created, and that's what you want to fall back on. So what are opportunities? What are things that they may be low-hanging fruit, things that are right in front of you, like extending relationships with clients by offering existing clients new products or services. Maybe it's opportunities to present or speak at a networking group or a professional association where you've got relationships and somebody is willing to say, you are a subject matter expert. Come on in and talk about your expertise. And those are the opportunities. And a lot of times we don't realize that we either have created the opportunities through our prior relationships, we've established a certain amount of reputational, I'll call it credit or street cred, because we've built these relationships over time on serving others and building trust and caring and loyalty. But those opportunities are there for you. They really are. And a lot of times it just means we have to leverage them. It just means we have to figure out how to prioritize them and allocate resources that it's going to take to unlock those opportunities. And so here's how you think about this. First of all, again, as I said before, everything in this plan is intended to be high level, but it's also intended to be actionable. And the way that it's actionable is you're constantly, once you develop this initial draft, as we're sitting here in August of 2024, is you're constantly going back and refining it leading up to January 1st and then January 2nd, January 3rd. You're constantly living in this breathing organic document to make changes that happen as opportunities present themselves and threats come at you. So the thing around opportunities is you got to prioritize. And we can't, those of us who wake up every day on our own and we're responsible for serving existing clients, finding new clients, building our reputational brand, doing social media, social presence. There's only 168 hours in the week, right? So you have to understand how to leverage partners and sales channels, investors, strategic partners. I mean, those are the things that we want to say. What are our initiatives? what's the impact from greatest to lowest on the success of our business, on our business growth? What are the resources required? How much asset allocation are we going to have to give each of these priorities in terms of time, money, resource? How much are we going to have to invest in each of them is predicated on what the potential positive outcome is. And so I've talked a little bit about budget allocation and funding. And so I'm not an accountant. I'm not a finance person. I spent 20 years in corporate America marketing, in the past 15 years consulting businesses, mostly small to mid-sized businesses on growth. My background isn't in the financial realm, but having been on my own for 15 years, I'm in a very strategic position to coach other organizations on how to look at your budget planning process. Now, the thing that I would draw attention to is what is missing 99 times out of 100 in any of my clients' budget planning process is this: the people side. No, I'm not talking about payroll. That's looking at people as if they're assets to be managed. I'm talking about what are the things that if you have employees, if you're going to subcontract or send work that you're not going to do yourself, you're going to outsource it, the people who you're going to compensate, have you allocated not just money for what you're going to pay them, but the money that's going to be required to do coaching, mentoring, training, developing? For every employee you have, for every person you engage, there's money that is going to cost you to build up their skill sets. And if they're a strategic partner, if there's somebody who's a strategic center of influence, a business referral source, it's going to cost you money to maintain and grow those relationships. I want to see a line item. I want to see multiple line items in your budget for your people initiatives, right? Because you've got 3 areas to grow your business. One is your strategy. 2 is your operations, your operational efficiency. And the 3rd are people-based initiatives. And I can say this again, 99 times out of 100, when I'm coaching an organization to prepare them for growth, the place I look first is their people investment strategy. So when you're building out your budget, that's an important consideration. So now I want to move to something called partnerships. It takes work to cultivate relationships. You've cultivated them. So next year, what are you going to do to leverage those relationships? Again, there's a number of different areas we can take this, but for simplicity's sake, I will start out by saying, how do we get you exposure in terms of your public speaking events at, keynotes at conferences, trade shows, annual events, business networking groups? Those are strategic partnerships to give you exposure. Maybe you want to author a definitive and exhaustive industry-related research article, you and other partners. Maybe you want to do webinars on informational and educational opportunities. Maybe you want to partner with somebody else to cultivate new products or new joint service offerings. Partnerships need to be front and center in your planning process. I typically look at, for each of my clients, on a monthly basis, and then I roll it up to the quarterly level. What are you doing in terms of partnership opportunities to cultivate existing relationships, to nurture them, grow them, and increase their value? And what are you doing in terms of your outreach to solicit new partnerships? So I'm a coach. I'm a business growth coach. I do 3 things, for example: employee training, leadership coaching, and business strategic growth, especially with a focus on culture transformation. So how do I pursue partnerships? I'm looking for organizations that have clients that they subcontract consulting work to, and they'll reach out to me. That's one partnership. I have a YouTube channel I created last year, and I've put over 350 informative videos there. I have video production people that I employ as a partnership. I reach out to people who are business founders, CEOs, thought leaders in the realm of transforming, creating great places to work. Those are partnerships I am cultivating. What are your strategic partnerships? Who are they? Where are they? Where do they hang out? In the same way, I coach my clients to have an ideal client profile and an ideal business referral partner profile. I also want to see you have an ideal partner profile. Who is she or he or them? Where'd you find them? What did it take to start the partnership? What does it take to cultivate the relationship? Okay, that's a high level on partnerships. Now I go into an area that I love because, as I alluded to before, I spent the first 20 years of my career in marketing leadership roles. So marketing. What are your marketing activities? So don't get bogged down. What's marketing? It's a very, very huge category, a discipline, but it's really three things essentially: sales, promotions, advertising, and PR. That's the three buckets that comprise marketing. So what's your outreach? Is it traditional? Is it going to be print publication, media, broadcast? Is it going to be online, social media, social presence, e-newsletter, email marketing? Whatever it is, you need to have monthly and quarterly activities that are planned out. And that's just a top line. I want to see for a calendar year. So if you bring me in to do a little bit of this kind of brainstorming with you as we move to the end of this year, as you start to really think about granular detail for 2025, I want to see things like podcast appearances, media efforts. Maybe you're doing webinars, paid or free, but I want to see them. And then I want to see your events and conferences calendar. I want to see those organizations, those groups of professionals that have your ideal client profile, or your business referral partners, or your strategic partners. I want to see what are the events you have planned, at least for the first 3 or 4 months of the year, ideally for the full year. I want to see where these important people are, that they congregate, where you're going to be, what are the organizations, what are the key dates for calendaring, what are the costs that are associated, are there speaking opportunities, and what are the measurable goals that you plan on achieving as a result of every single event that you attend. And then all of this planning, all of this preparation tells me, okay, for you, January, February, March, what are key initiatives? I want to see it for Q1. Then April, May, June, I want to see it. July, August, September. Here we are for next year, but we're sitting in third quarter. How are you doing year to date through the middle of the third quarter in terms of your 2024 strategic planning? Same thing for next year. Then the fourth quarter. Now, you should already know, regardless of where you are in the life cycle of your business, you should know what seasonality there is. So for many people, January, February are slow months. For others, they're really important months. For some of us, many people have disappeared over the summer. They put their head in the proverbial sand, or they're taking time off because the summer is historically slow for people who just take a deep breath and reconnect with family and wellness, and that's fine. But you need to know the cyclical nature, the seasonality, or the trends, or the variance from a calendaring standpoint. You need to know this, and then you can start to prepare through your planning for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And when I'm brought into an organization to consult with them on their strategic planning process, this is what we do. We sit down and we line item initiatives, projects, plans, outcomes by month. And there's an age-old saying, you make your months, you make your quarters. You make your quarters, you make the year. So this is what we want to see. We want to see all of this documented on a calendar basis from Q1 to Q4. And I mentioned that we're going to be tracking budget. And so budget versus actual is typically something where you have to understand that you need to give yourself some grace. You need to have a little bit of flexibility. A lot of people are so locked into the numbers. They're so locked into the numbers, the actuals relative to plan, that they're really doing themselves a disservice. And what do I mean by that? It's from a budget planning process, looking on a performance on an as happens real-time basis. We too often fall guilty to literally touching the bark of a single tree instead of pulling back the lens and looking at the landscape of the full valley. Meaning we're so involved in the numbers that we don't see what's happening beneath them. And what I mean by that is typically typically, the reason organizations fail isn't because of a flawed strategy. It's not. That's delusional to think it is. And typically, organizations don't fail because they're not optimally efficient. They haven't optimized their operations. That's a falsity. That's a fallacy as well. In my 35 years of experience, organizations that are the most successful are the best at leveraging their people initiatives. They spend the most time, the most effort figuring out who are the most amazing rock star employees. They have the most superpower attributes, characteristics. These organizations hire the best people. They empower their people. They're constantly measuring how they're doing for their people. They're giving up ownership of their companies for their people. In other words, they're creating an amazing culture. When you build an amazing culture, in other words, you really don't need to spend a whole lot of time drilling into the numbers, because if you empower, if you unleash your people's full and untapped potential, you will outperform nearly all of your competitors. I think this begs me giving a little bit more explanation to what I'm talking about. What I mean is this. Early on, when I started my practice back in 2009, I went on a journey of exploration. I was committed to researching what, if any, attributes all of the most financially top performing companies all over the world, what, if any, attributes they shared. And it took me the better part of a decade to come to the realization, through researching over 200 countries, over 7,000 for-profit companies, and conclude that there's only one characteristic of all organizations that enable them financially to outperform their competitors and end up being number one or number two of their respective industry or sector. It has nothing to do with country of origin, nothing to do with their leadership team or their board composition, it has nothing to do with their sector, their products or services. What it does have to do with is if they have built an amazing workplace culture that truly unleashes their people's untapped potential. So again, you want to stay on top of your financial performance month over month. You want to see how you're doing at any point in time, but stop focusing so much on the numbers, so much on the numbers, that you're not focusing on your people initiatives that are going to drive your organization's financial performance. So that was important that I kind of talk through that at a high level. And that's really the approach. That's the methodology that I employ with my clients, is we take a very high level view. We start out right now in the middle of the third quarter. We already start documenting what we're going to focus on next year. Now, I do want to say something about the very nature of strategic planning. The benefit, the true value of the strategic plan is not that document that you're going to write. It's not the actual document, because most people do the strategic planning process. I've been at this a long time. I've seen it thousands of times. The organizations I work with, other organizations, when I'm coaching them, they produce a strategic plan and then it goes on the shelf or in the hard drive. And it's not a living, breathing document. But here's the beauty of strategic planning. It's the process. It's the process of going through the exercise of where are we right now? Where do we want to grow? Where do we want to expand? What new markets? What new services? What new client segments? What new offerings? What new social media outlets? What new public speaking? Wherever we want to go into the future, it's the process of documenting it, thinking it through, working with your leadership team, working with your strategic partners. Here's the other thing I would suggest. If you are a solopreneur, if you're somebody who wakes up every day and you're responsible for the growth and success of your business, I'm going to say something to you that you may not historically have done, but it's okay because we're forward thinking. What partners can you involve in your strategic planning process? So what clients can you interview, engage, or talk through to get a deeper understanding of where you are now to determine where you can go? So you're going to talk to all of your all of your own stakeholders, people you partner with, existing clients, maybe lost clients, maybe centers of influence, people who host business networking groups that you're very active in, anybody and everybody who is a resource to you, involve them in your strategic planning process. And I will add that oftentimes what we don't do is we don't reach out to other people that we've built relationships with and say, hey, what do you find most beneficial about working with me? What is the value that I add to you? What are the benefits you get from partnering or hiring us or me? And really understand your unique value proposition. That's required for planning your future growth. For those of us who wake up every day and we are responsible for driving our own business forward, your unique value proposition is what sets you apart that makes you fundamentally unique, memorable, and invaluable. And that's really all we have to leverage. And you want to build that into your strategic planning process. So thanks for coming into Chasing the Dream, for coming to the YouTube channel, for taking time to check out this video. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it. And if you're interested in talking about ways that you can implement this process of strategic planning for your 2025 to ensure success, reach out to me. Let me know how I can be of assistance. Let's set up some time to talk. Thank you.